Hey everybody, doing a little work inside the shop today. This is the 188 diesel, 188 case diesel that I'm working on. That's going to go into my case 310G crawler. Decided I'm going to do some videos of the disassembly and rebuilding and reassembly of this engine. Apparently these are pretty common motors. A lot of case equipment had either this or the 207 motor, which is the big brother to this, but they share a lot of parts, or at least the general way they go together is similar. Is the manual covers both engines together, but anyway. This motor, when I got it, it was apart. The whole bottom end, from the head gasket down to the oil pan was all together, but the head was off. There's the head over there. So I'm going to do a full rebuild on it. I just pulled off the connecting rods, and just for fun, I've never used it before, so I wanted to check the condition of the journals on the crankshaft. So I bought some Plastigauge, and I Plastigauged the middle bearing and number 2 connecting rod journal there, and that's with the old worn bearings, and they were perfect. Those bearings, they were visibly worn, but they weren't worn by the Plastigauge. It was about 3 thou of clearance, which is perfect, really. So the bearings weren't overly abused. They probably had good oil pressure and oil circulation. The finish itself is really nice, no ridges or nothing. So I took all the pistons out. Here they are over here. This is the oil pump. I took this off. This is actually it's kind of part of the number 1 bearing cap here. The oil pump went here. It was driven by the crankshaft gear, and there's some shims here that raise or lower the pump to get the proper gear tooth engagement there. So anyway, I also got the pulley off, the crankshaft pulley. That's right here. This is a little tricky. I had to do some guesswork, but the pulley went on like so, and this piece here, the square drive, is a separate component, and it's threaded. It's right-hand thread. I got mixed up. I thought it was left-hand thread, but it's right-hand thread, and that's what fastens the pulley onto the crankshaft. Oh, and also, this surface of the pulley here, this shiny part, is the sealing surface for the front main seal, so be sure not to mess that up. My plan is I want to take the crank and cam out, but I can't really do that with it on the engine stand, which is sort of annoying, because you see this plate here, this aluminum plate, has to come off. There's a couple bolts, and it has to come back obviously and out, but those flywheel mounting studs are in the way. So I'm going to take off this front gear housing and water housing that sticks below, and I'm going to bring in my steel welding table, and I'm going to drop the head surface onto the table so I can pull the crank out, slide the cam out. I can free up the tappets or lifters or whatever, and make sure the cam bushings are good and all that. And then when this cover goes back on, it can get a new front main seal, and when this goes back on, it'll get a new rear main seal. Then it'll go back on the engine stand for the rest of the reassembly. So anyway, I'm going to start taking off some of these bolts, and I'll show you what happens next. Okay, so the first cover I took off is it's a combination injection pump, drive gear, and water tube housing. This is housing for an older motor. The newer motors have, it's a 2-piece. I think the bottom part is 1 piece and the top part's another piece. I forget exactly. But anyway, so I took it off, but the gasket's still holding it. And these are awesome tools to help get stuff apart like this without damaging it. You don't want to use a metal hammer because you might chip or crack something or dent it. But this, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's got shot inside it. It's called a dead blow. So, oh, that was easy. So we'll take that guy off. The first thing I'm going to remove here is on the other side here there's the injection pump drive shaft, and I want to take that off because it's got seals on it that I want to replace. Alright, so I got a little confused here for a little bit. I had to consult the manual because it just seems so strange that this gear does this, but it just falls right out. There's no bearing that this rides on or anything. There's this spring plunger here that rides against the inside of the case. There's a little mark on the case where this plunger pushes against, and then this just goes in there, and it's weird. I mean, the only thing really holding this in place is this plunger and the end of the drive shaft that goes into the injection pump. So I don't know, that's just kind of weird. And the other thing to note, this little metal tab here is the timing mark for the idler gear. So the dot on the injection pump gear would line up where the pointer points. So anyway, this can come out, and I can take this nut off, and I can pull the drive shaft out. These are the two seals here that need to be replaced. Oh, and one other little side note, unrelated to this, but there's a dot on the drive shaft tang for the injection pump, and if you look inside the injection pump where this shaft goes, there's a corresponding dot. And when you put the pump back on, the dot on the pump and the dot on the shaft have to line up, or else they'll be 180 degrees out. Okay, so I took all the bolts out of the main gear cover. Now this is something to keep in mind whenever you're taking apart something like this with a bunch of bolts, but where the bolts go through different thicknesses. Here are the bolts that came out. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4 different lengths. And this is the order they came out. Starting here, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now this is going to be partly going to be notes for me, and also help for you guys if you took these bolts out and just threw them in a pile. So anyway, I'm going to label each one of these with a toe tag, and then make a note on my sheet here. I've got a running list of notes of the way things go together. A lot of things are already mentioned in the manual, but you know, it's good to just take a note of it anyway, just in case your motor is different or your manual is different than what's actually than what you're actually working on. So anyway, I'm going to tag each one of these 1 through 9, and I'm going to make a note as to which hole is number 1 and which direction I counted in. And that way they'll all go back together in the same hole. Okay, so now I'm going to have to remove this idler gear from its shaft in order to take this housing off. Now, something interesting to note here on my particular engine, this metal tab is the timing mark. I don't know why they didn't just put a dot on the gear like anybody else, but that's the timing mark for this gear, and it is 1 tooth off on the cam gear. And this engine really doesn't look like it's been apart before, but it's nonetheless off. And I don't know if it was off in a corresponding direction on the injection pump drive gear, but maybe that's why the owner to owners ago took this motor out and started taking it apart because he said it didn't run well. So anyway, so to take this off, you punch these little fingers out of the way with a drift and a hammer, and that's it. That's 9/16. Okay. I'll pull off the assembly. Let's see. There's the 2 bolts, this sheet metal timing pointer, and this metal disc here. And behind the disc, so you should be careful so you don't lose it. See, there's this shim here. You can put a different number of shims here depending on the wear of this plate, I believe, or the wear of something, to just basically so this plate doesn't push against the face of the gear. So anyway, just make sure those shims are there, or they're not lost. Slide that out. Now there's these 2 bolts here. Yep, also 9/16. And that should be it as far as what holds this case on. So hopefully we get a little bit of stiction so this case doesn't just fall off on top of me. That gasket's holding it on there pretty well. Bolts aside, bag and tag those bolts, bag and tag everything. Alright, let's give her another whack. See, I'm holding on to this even though it's not falling off, just in case. Let's see. There we go. You can hear it sounds a little different. Okay, it's on some dowel pins. That's why it's coming off a little sticky. So can I whack it over there? No, not really. Can't get behind it. Yeah, gasket doesn't really want to go, so I'm going to employ the use of the handiest tool in the shop, the screwdriver. Do 90% of your shop jobs with a flathead screwdriver. There we go. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Oh, that is a satisfying feeling. I love it, I love it. That gasket's kind of a little bit clingy, but we got her off. And we didn't even have to buy it dinner. Okay, so I turned the motor up in preparation for taking these sleeves out. And I've got this sleeve puller that my old boss made for me for when I rebuilt my Ford tractor motor. That's a 172 diesel, so it's roughly the same size as this motor, but I didn't think it would work perfectly, but it pretty much did. What it's composed of, if you've never seen a sleeve puller before, there's a length of threaded rod, and then there's this arch here, which sits on top of the cylinders. And then there's this. This is the most important part. It's a plate with a shoulder cut in it. And this radius here is the same as the cylinder sleeve. So I'll show you. See, it sets in there just right. And the OD, it's important that the OD is not greater than the diameter that the block is bored out to. So the reason I'm showing you all this is because this is going to be inside the cylinder and you won't be able to see it. This is going to get installed down at the bottom of the cylinder sleeve and hook on there. This threaded rod will go through with a nut on the back, or a double nut so it doesn't unthread itself. I'm going to put a nut on here and just turn it down with a wrench, and that will draw this threaded rod up. It'll pull the sleeve up out of the block. Up. Here, I'll show you now that you've got an idea. It's gonna be like that. So it's gonna pull that sleeve right up and out. And this is a wet sleeve motor. So I believe that these sleeves should come out pretty easy. They're just an O-ring on the top and on the bottom, and once you pull it past those O-rings, I think it comes right out. My Ford was a dry sleeve motor, so when I pulled these sleeves out, you look inside and you see pretty much the same thing. You see cylinder walls, except they're very rough machined. I imagine that's to give the sleeve some sort of a grip when it's in there. Very rough surface finish, and that's called the dry sleeve because the water, the coolant is not in contact with the sleeve. So I'm going to get this set up and get cranking on it. Alright, so I got the puller all set up, and you can see down in there is the pulling plate latched into the edges of the cylinder. Now I've got a double nut up there so the rod doesn't spin. I'm going to hold that stationary with one wrench, and I'm going to turn that nut with the other wrench so I can jack the cylinder sleeve up. Now I've squirted a little bit of oil on here. I haven't put any heat to it. I haven't really done anything special. I assume they're going to come out pretty easily. And if they don't come out easy, I can either heat them up, try a little bit of oil. Another technique is to run a weld bead around the circumference or up and down the length of the sleeve, and that'll shrink it a little bit. But be careful if you do that, at least in my situation, because my crankshaft is still in there, and you're going to get weld spatter on your crankshaft unless you properly protect it. So anyway, you know, I should have put some grease on those threads, but whatever. Let's see how she goes. Oh. Let's see, is she coming? Oh yeah, it's tight, but she's coming. Oh. Yeah, can you see that? Just barely. You can see a slight little ridge start to develop there. Oh man, is it satisfying having something pull out like this. I just noticed this setup isn't quite square. This leg is right against the lip of the cylinder sleeve, and this has like got a 3/16 of an inch, so it's not pulling perfectly straight, but whatever. She's coming. Now I have to be careful. I'm not sure that the outside diameter of my pulling plate is small enough. I'm not sure if it'll pull all the way through or what. So I might have to modify it if I feel it gets stuck. But here she comes. Pulling nice and easy now, but it's not popping out like I thought it was going to. I guess that's what happens when you talk about things that you don't know what you're talking about. Now it's kind of loose. Ah, Hey, hey, look at that. Ah, success. I can't believe how awesome that is, that my old sleeve puller was the exact same bore diameter as what I used for my Ford. But there's the sleeve. It came out pretty good. There's some schmoo there from, you know, being in the water and everything. It's kind of wet and gooey. But that's all it is to it. You see, you can get an idea of what the bottom looks like here. How the plate just socks right into the sleeve. There you go. Let's see, what goodies have we got in here? We got some, yeah, doesn't look too bad. It's not rusty, it's actually kind of oily looking. Well, anyway, that sleeve is out. I'm going to do the 3 other sleeves, and then that's it. I'm going to flip it upside down, get the engine hoist on it, bring my welding table in, set this down on the welding table, do a little extra cleanup on it, take the cam out, take the crank out, any other little bits and pieces, and I think I'm going to have it hot tanked. Just, you know, why not? I mean, I've gone this far. It'd be nice to get it all nice and super clean. And what I also want to do, I want to have this head surface machined flat again, because the head's been off for quite some time. So who knows if this has been rusted or beaten up or dented or stuff's fallen on it and whatever. I would just like to spend a little bit of extra time and money and not have to worry about that. So I think that concludes the first episode of this Case 188 diesel motor rebuild and restoration. So stay tuned for more. It's going to take some time for this to get brought to the machine shop and everything, and when it comes back we'll continue on. I've also got some injectors in the mail. The motor didn't come with injectors, but I found a set of used injectors for $25 a piece. So those are going to have to get rebuilt, of course. I'm going to have my injection pump rebuilt. And we're coming right along. It's exciting. So thanks for watching, everybody. And stay tuned for more. Make sure to leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, the like button, and let me know what your thoughts are. And we'll keep the videos coming for you. So thanks for watching, everybody, and see you next time, and come back for more.